Welcome back to the Practical Church Podcast. My name is Dylan Dotson, and this show is all about helping you plant and grow healthy churches. Today, I'm going to share with you 7 ministry pet peeves that I have, and hopefully they can be some things to think through in your own ministry, maybe make some adjustments, or this could be just me being like an old man, get off your lawn. But I do think some of this will be helpful. So I'm just going to share some pet peeves that I have, ways that I've wrestled with them personally, maybe advice to you if some of them are hitting close to home. And before we get into that, as always, this show is brought to you in partnership with Mission Support. I feel like a typical pastor ministry leader, there's a lot of things that you're doing, and some of the things that you're doing you don't quite enjoy. And this is where Mission Support comes in to help. So if you check out missionsupport.com today, talk to a guide, and see any number of their services, things like SEO, payroll, websites, bookkeeping, videos, graphics, mailers, printing, a whole assortment of things that a lot of pastors maybe don't enjoy doing, but they're kind of the details that need to get done. You can talk to a guide today for free at missionsupport.com and go from being frustrated to loving being a pastor again. We use Mission Support personally at New City Church as well and highly recommend them. So be sure to check out our partners with the show, Mission Support. And now let's get into today's episode. So, 7 ministry pet peeves. This might come a little bit off as like old man, curmudgeon, get off my lawn. But I don't think so. At least I try not to make that so. And I think some of this stuff is just things that I've seen over the years that I'm not big fans of. Now, of course, an episode like this could come across as like, I don't have any issues of my own and I do everything perfectly, which of course is not true. But in this episode, I'm going to share some of the things that frustrates me and see if they're applicable. And curious your thoughts on them as well. So here's number 1. And I'm going to come out swinging here because this is not just a pet peeve. Something that's really annoys me. And I would say if you're in this season and this applies to you, please do not do this. Here's number 1. Church planters wanting to meet to raise money, but then give me no response when I say we can't give financially at this time, but I would still love to get together. And so this happens a lot, especially New City. We try to be very generous and intentional with our funding. At this point, as I'm recording, like we don't have any openings for new church plants fundings until 2027. So we'll get asked from time to time, sometimes people from this show or just from networks or things we're associated with, friends I have. They'll reach out and say, hey, I'd love to meet, share the mission of our church. And it's always kind of obvious, hey, they're obviously wanting to ask for support, which is totally fine. 100% recommend. You should reach out to as many people as possible. And then I'll respond and be straight up honest. If funding is not an option at this time, I'll say, hey, I'd love to get together, learn more about what you're doing. New City at this time, doesn't have any openings or availability or whatever to fund any more church plants, but I'd still have to get together. And I don't, this might feel like exaggerating, but I would say like over 90 to 95% of church planners don't respond after I respond with that email. They don't even say, hey, sometimes they might say thank you, but that's even kind of rare. More often than not, they just don't even say anything. And it comes across as like not very good, especially, you never know who you're going to run into in the future, especially for, in Raleigh, if you're planting near Raleigh, like we're probably going to see each other at some point at some gathering or whatever. And it just really rubs me the wrong way. It's like you clearly were only asking for money, and that's okay. That's okay. But not even to respond after I say we can't give financially, it comes across as like a little bit arrogant. Like, hey, you figured everything out. You just want money. I want to say this, man. Do not do that for a couple of reasons. Okay, couple of reasons. Number 1, just because somebody tells you they can't give financially, and this could be a church or an individual person. I just want to say this: just because they say they can't or won't give financially at this time, doesn't mean that they 100% won't give financially at this time. Now. I don't know where that whisper came from. Now, very likely they're not going to give, but you never know. You never know. And all these times I've told church planners, hey, we can't give at this time, and no response. Man, if we really hit it off, or if their vision was really aligned with New Cities or something like that, you never know. And it might not be right now, but it could be in 6 months or in a year. And a church plant will take money at any time. So just because they say no, doesn't mean it's no. Number 2, they might not give you money financially, but there might be something that you learn that will radically help or change or implement your launch process or your church plan. There might be a nugget about kids ministry or preaching or assimilation or whatever. That it might not be a financial help to you, but it could be a help to you in other ways. And so you never know what you can learn from an established pastor who has planted a church or is leading a church or whatever. So to do not even not respond, but to not meet and not respond with somebody who might have wisdom for you. And hear me, I'm not saying I've got all this wisdom, but of course, to a church planter, I do have more wisdom than them. you never know what you can learn. So church planners, if you're reaching, ask people for money and they say they can't give you money, please still meet with them if they offer it, because you never know. You never know what other things you might learn. And then number 3, they might not be able to give you money, but if they really connect with you and believe what you're doing, they probably know other people, other churches that might. So there has been many times where I've met with a planter that New City is funding or maybe not funding or just getting to know or whatever. And I will literally text other people, hey, you should meet with this guy. Unprompted, not because they asked or whatever, because it's good to know more people. It's good to have relationships with other pastors, especially if they're somewhat local. So I will go out of my way to connect them with other people who might give them money or wisdom or help or donate something. You never know. So I just want to say, planters, anybody, obviously anyone, I guess is a general principle for everybody, but especially if you're at the planting phase or you're going to be planting or whatever, and you ask someone to meet for money and they tell you they cannot give, first of all, do not ignore them, because that makes you look really bad. Do not ignore them. But second of all, meet with them. So I do on occasion, when I say 90 to 95%, that's probably not fair. That's probably fair in saying we don't actually meet. It's not that 90% don't end up responding. Some do respond, and what typically happens if they do respond, they'll say something like, hey, that sounds great, I'd love to meet. And I'll give them my calendar or whatever, and they never pick a time. So even if they do respond and say, hey, thanks, it sounds good, still love to get together, they still don't pick a time. And I would just say, don't do that. Don't do that. It just doesn't come across the right way. It makes the planter seem like someone they're not, which I know people are not just after the money, but it makes it seem like you really don't care about relationships and getting to know other pastors, especially if they're local. You just want their money. And of course, I'm not going to recommend you to anyone else or connect you with anyone else if we don't actually meet. So church planners wanting to raise money. If you ask someone to meet for financial purposes or support raising, and they say they can't give financially, you should still meet with them, because A, they might end up giving you money. B, you might learn something else that's just helpful to your church plant. Or C, they might connect you with other people who can. So please, 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 church planters, respond and still meet with people, even if they're not giving you money. Number 1. That's number 1. Number 2, might not be surprising if you follow this podcast, is not responding to emails or being quote unquote bad at emails. Here's the deal. Remember, people send emails. And we are called to care for, love, and shepherd people. To ignore emails is to ignore people. It is to ignore people. Emailing is not a talent. So it's not a natural born gifting ability that some people just naturally respond to emails and some people don't. Email is a skill that you can develop. Yes, some people are more organized than others, but you can put parameters in place and things in place to actually help you respond to your emails. They come from people. And what will happen is your people will feel uncared for. It'll come across as you're quote unquote too busy for them if you don't respond. So please respond to your emails. What I'm not saying is that you need to respond right away or within the hour or even within the day. Generally speaking, I mean, I do inbox zero, so I have a process of doing that. But man, within 24, 48 hours at the most, because here's what happens, man. When you're really shoddy at this sort of thing, people just have a hard time trusting. Like, oh, I haven't heard from you, or I haven't heard from you right away, so you're not going to respond. If you're someone who always responds, people will trust, and they won't nag you or bug you as much because they trust that you're actually going to respond. I think part of this whole expectation of like you got to text back right away or email right away, and so people spend way too much time on email, is because they don't respond to email, and so people don't trust you, and so they keep following up with you because they don't expect a response or they don't know if you're going to respond. So I would just say, remember, emails come from people. We are supposed to care for and shepherd people. To ignore emails is to ignore people, and it's not okay. It's not okay, because email is a skill that you can develop. It is not a talent that you're born with or you can't do. So whatever that is, I mean, my long story short is check your emails left often. And when you check them, maybe put on your calendar, hey, I'm going to spend this 30-minute block here, checking my emails or whatever. And then when you're actually doing that, like focus on all the emails, respond to all of them, move them, whatever. And then you can get back to it when you're done. But please, please, please respond to your emails. Respond to your emails, because they come from people. Number 3, and this will not be also probably not a surprise if you follow this podcast at all, but is pastors not prioritizing sermon prep. Pastors not prioritizing sermon prep. If you preach, especially if you preach regularly, it's one of the most significant and important things you can do for your church is to preach good sermons, prepared sermons, and focused sermons. Now, as I'm sharing this too, this is an experience I had literally this week as I'm recording this episode. Tuesdays are my sermon prep days. So Tuesday mornings until noon, I'm like locked in, no phone, no email, no social media, no nothing. And I just do it. And, Monday was a really full day for me. Then I had a bunch of extra stuff, staff with one-on-ones, a lot of stuff I had to get done this week. And sometimes I feel, even though I was going to get through all my task list, sometimes you still feel the pressure of like, I got to do all these things. There's like someone had a call, it was going through something really difficult, all this stuff. And I was really pressured to be like, oh, I could just like do the sermon prep some other time. But here's the deal. If I had moved sermon prep, it would have been sitting over my head because this is the time, the place that I do it every week. I would know I have to do it and I have to like kind of start and stop and fit around other places. So what I did is what I always do is I left my sermon prep where it was. I left it where it was. I'm going to do this no matter what, and I will get to the other things eventually. And I'm so glad I did because A, it kept me focused when I actually had to do sermon prep. And then B, when I was doing the other things, talking with some people, having these meetings, having a not very easy phone call, I wasn't also thinking I got to get all this stuff done and still do that. When am I going to get to sermon prep this week? So please prioritize your sermon prep. You have a lot of tasks to do, a lot of things to do. But again, it also becomes like a habitual thing. Like this is just what I do. And so I get it. You gotta be flexible, especially if you're in the church plant phase, all that sort of stuff. I'm not saying you have to like block out your entire week and you can't be flexible at all. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying if you preach regularly, you should be pretty inflexible with your sermon prep. Now, if you need to move it a day, that's fine too, but at least keep that same chunk of time. I mean, I would recommend not moving it as much as possible because it gets you in the habit of like, this is when I do sermon prep. This is what I do. It's a non-negotiable. I don't have to like ask or think or like argue with myself or whatever. But if you do have to move it, at least like do it all at the same time and, the same chunk of hours, but prioritize sermon prep because if you don't, man, it will stress you out. You'll be doing stuff on Saturday when you shouldn't be, and your sermon prep won't be as good because it'll be a lot more scattered. So pastors not prioritizing sermon prep, pet peeve. Number 4, acting like people in the Bible are dumb and crazy, or I should say, I guess we're dumb and crazy. And here's what I mean. I'm gonna give you like an example. Someone's preaching and you get to like the quote unquote doubting Thomas part, which as you'll see in a second, I don't think is fair. To talk about how like, I can't believe, Thomas just didn't believe. And Jesus said he was going to resurrect. And can you not believe it? They're all telling him he didn't believe. And he didn't believe until, he could touch Jesus' side and see with his own eyes that Jesus rose from the dead. And I just want to say, it's not fair because A, all the other 11 disciples had already seen the resurrected Jesus. So who knows what any of the other ones would have thought if they were in that position. And B, man, the people in the Bible are normal people just like us, which means we would, in a lot of situations, respond very similarly than they do. So sometimes, people talk, oh, he's just a hothead. He wasn't always thinking. He just said whatever came to the forefront. And some of that stuff might be true. Maybe he was quick to speak, but we can sometimes like frame it as ways like, man, the disciples, they just were so dumb. They didn't see what Jesus was doing. And I just want to be like, we can do the same thing. So what I'm not saying is when you're preaching and you don't point out, hey, here's what this person or here's where these group of people got it wrong. But I'm saying you point it out. Here they got it wrong. And then you say, and here's how we do this in our own life. I mean, can you imagine being Thomas, for example, and everyone else is saying he's resurrected, but you've never seen someone rose from the dead. Like, you've never experienced that. And so like, it would be hard for you to believe it as well, especially for us as Bible readers. Like we know the story. So of course Jesus rose from the dead. They didn't know. It's the first time he'd ever heard it. And what are the times maybe that you doubt in your life that were obvious, that everyone was trying to tell you? You've ever been in a situation where everyone's trying to tell you like, hey, the game ended this way, or a bunch of people witnessed something happen that sounds unbelievable, but they all saw it and you're very skeptical until maybe you saw the video yourself. Like we're just like Thomas. And so all I have to say, I always be careful when you're preaching not to act like the people in the Bible are like dumb or weird or crazy or I didn't know anything was going on, but rather say, hey, here's how we can be just like them if we are not careful. Because again, a lot of times these stories in the Bibles are trying to show us, human nature, who we are, who God is, how we can relate to him and the grace that God gives us. So I would just encourage you when you're preaching not to minimize or make the Bible characters in the Bible seem other or different or dumb or crazy or whatever, as opposed to like relatable and just like us. Which is what they are, because it also helps people better connect with the story. Instead of saying, I can't believe they did that, like, oh man, think of times in your life when you've done something similar, and it really helps connect in a better way. So maybe that's a small thing, but people acting like people in the Bible were dumb or crazy, not a big fan. Number five, trying to look cool or be cool. Now, I feel like I want to give all the caveats here. Obviously, people's styles are different. People in different generations wear different things. Culturally, wear different things. Where you're from. So this is not like a blanket. Hey, everyone needs to wear this type of style, when they preach or in their everyday clothes, and they should. I'm not saying that at all. But you all know what I'm saying. Where it's like you see somebody, and it's like if it feels like they're trying a little too hard. And the younger somebody is, the more it feels this way. And again, I'm 35, so I'm not up there. But this might be my most get off my lawn take, is that there's just multiple times where I'll see clips or videos, and maybe there's been like hair stuff that's like, bro, I don't know what are you doing? Or like certain clothing styles or whatever. And I'm not, if that's you, then do it. And of course, I can't know. I don't know these people personally. So I 100% without a doubt, no, I've probably gotten some of these things wrong. But it just feels like, what are you trying to say or do, or who are you trying to reach? Now, of course, not everyone's trying to reach someone like me who lives in North Carolina, white guy, middle class. So I get it. But there's sometimes it seems like, is that you, or is that what you saw people online do? And so you're trying to like repeat it. And I want to just say this too. The more that you are, for lack of a better word, on the edge, maybe stylistically in your dress, whatever, hairstyle, whatever, the more you're going to alienate older saints. And again, you're not trying to reach all people, so that might be okay. But if you're like wearing stuff that like most people don't wear, or you talk in the way that most people don't talk, the older someone is, the less they're going to be like, yeah, I'm not going to put up with that. And so I do think sometimes church planters are like, hey man, we can't get any older people at our church. Part of that is if you're a young church planter, I mean, it's just harder. But like, if you come across us some sort of way, they wouldn't go like, there's times I'll see, pastors, church planters, I guess use Facebook or social media, since they all track us, I feel like I see all the, hey, new church plant coming to this town, whatever. I see it all the time. And there are times I'm just like, I would never go to the church. I would never go there because of how they're presenting themselves on this video. Now, they might not be trying to reach me, so that's fine. And again, I'm not saying that everyone has to look a certain way. I'm just saying there are many times where I'm like, it seems like you're trying really hard to look a certain way or to come across a certain way. And if I was just like a regular 35-year-old dude looking for a church, I would not go there. Like, I'm just like, I'm not trying to follow someone who like thinks they're cool or they're awesome or whatever. So again, all the caveats, wear what you're going to wear, be yourself. But if you're changing who you are because you're trying to look a certain way, or maybe there are some well-known pastors or online influencers and they wear that style, they're probably the exception and not the rule. So if you're trying to emulate someone for the sake of emulating them as opposed to just being yourself, then that can be hard. So I'm not saying, you need to wear the same thing if you from the time you're 20 to the time you're 70. Styles change, language changes, hairstyle changes, how people communicate from stage, like publicly speak, it changes, all the things. But just be yourself. If you're trying to look cool or be cool or communicate in a way that's like, hey man, I'm this cool new hip thing, you're going to have a really hard time not just gathering people, but gathering older saints, which is what church plants desperately need. So just be careful. Be yourself. Be yourself. But how we present ourselves does impact the type of people that we can reach and might come to our church. So just keep that in mind. So trying to look cool or be cool for the sake of it, not a big fan. Number 6, a pastor not managing their household well. Now, this might not be a surprise considering it's a biblical qualification for an elder. So if you read 1 Timothy 3:4-5, it talks about if an elder can't manage their own household, how can they manage the household of God? And again, I feel like you got to have all the caveats here. You can be a great, godly husband, father, pastor, dad, that sort of thing. It doesn't mean you're going to guarantee a certain outcome for your kids. So this isn't saying if your kid ever makes a bad decision or whatever, you can't be a pastor. I'm not saying that at all. But how you parent and if you're married, how you treat your spouse, if you're a man, how you lead your family, like it matters. And I've just seen it over the years now, done a number of church plant assessments, talked to a number of church planters and pastors over the years. And how you raise your kids and how you speak about your kids and what behaviors you allow your kids to have, and just excuse away of like, well, that's just what 10-year-olds do, or that's just what 13-year-olds do, or that's just what 2-year-olds do, as opposed to like leading, disciplining, correcting, guiding your kids. It matters. And so this one, maybe you can't always tell from the public how somebody's doing personally, but someone who just is not being intentional with their family. And when intentional with their family, here's what I don't mean. I don't mean just they try to spend time with their family, because obviously you want to do that, like we'll do that. But like, man, are they intentional with how they treat their kids and their spouse? Is there a family going in a direction, or does it feel like the kids are all over the place and the family's all over the place and everything's scattered and they're just like trying to survive week to week? And hear me, that happens. But if we're going to lead the people of God, if we're going to be leaders, then like we do need to have our stuff together. Now, of course, hear me, there are seasons, again, all the caveats, health things, grief, loss. I'm not saying you have to pretend like everything's great all the time. I'm not saying that. But if everything is in a disarray all the time, you can't really lead other people healthily. So if you're not healthy, if your family's not healthy, and you're supposed to lead people, like you can't lead them to be healthy families. So you're not gonna be perfect. Obviously, no one's perfect. All the things, all the caveats. But if you don't manage your household well, or at least have like a plan or intentional, and like your kids are kind of running the house and kind of undisciplined, I don't think it's a good sign for long-term longevity. And then number 7, again, this one is probably the most hardest to tell in some ways, or your hardest to see from afar. But here's number 7, a pet peeve: someone who does not have a personal pursuit and love for Jesus. Someone who doesn't have a personal pursuit and love for Jesus. So, I mean, it makes me really nervous when I talk to pastors or planters. I'm like, yeah, man, I'm just like, there's so much going on. I don't got time. I don't really have a lot of time other than for sermon prep, for like reading the Bible and spending time with the Lord and praying. Like that's a really bad sign that if you're too busy working for Jesus than you are loving Jesus, then other people can't do the same way. So there's passages like in Philippians and 1 Corinthians where Paul's like, hey, imitate me as I imitate Christ. This is a great and worthy goal. Not that you're perfect or have everything all together, but the question I like to ask myself is, if other people had this, would I want other people to have the same spiritual disciplines and rhythms that I have? Or if other people had the same spiritual rhythms and disciplines that I have, would they be growing closer to Jesus and growing in their love for Jesus and walking with Jesus? And again, the humble part, we're all trying to be like, well, no, I'm not perfect. I get nobody's perfect. But do you have regular rhythms in your life that if other people were to employ those same regular rhythms, would it be a good thing for them? Or would you recommend it? Would you recommend it? Not that you're perfect, I get it, but would you recommend it? If you don't personally love Jesus, for these last 2 points, and your household is a wreck, man, that church plan is not going to survive. Or you're gonna burn it down, or you're going to be burnt out, and someone else is going to have to pick up the pieces. If you don't personally have a love for Jesus, praying with Jesus, praying to Jesus, walking with Jesus, caring about Jesus, devotionally, maybe listening to worship songs yourself, listen to sermons yourself, because if you're preaching, you should have a couple of preachers that you put through the rotation that you're hearing God's word taught. If you're preaching most weekends, a personal pursuit and love for Jesus. If you don't have that, man, you're not going to last, and it's just not worth it, man. It is not worth doing this ministry thing. I'm not talking about doing like the online influencer thing, but I'm like actually pastoring people and caring for people and leading a church. It's not worth it if you don't actually love Jesus. Like there's so many other things you should be doing. So this is not hey, if there's anything else you should don't do ministry. I'm not saying that because I don't think that's true, but I'm saying you got to love Jesus genuinely yourself. Of course, you're going to have seasons of yourself, of doubt and difficulty, of course, but just make sure your personal pursuit and love for Jesus is a priority, because if it is not, it'll come up at some point. You'll have the stories of pastors that fall, or unhealthy church culture or staff culture, friendships, whatever. A personal pursuit and love of Jesus. If you don't have that, things will not last. And those were 7 ministry pet peeves. Here's my observation for this episode. I want to encourage you, especially if you're a ministry leader, to own your hobbies. It is really good for you and for your people, if you're going to lead them well, for them to know like you have stuff that you enjoy. And here's why I say this. Our culture today, everyone talks about how busy they are and they got all these things going on. And if you talk about something you enjoy doing and someone says like, well, I don't have time for that, then you kind of feel bad. And it's really like everyone has the same amount of time in the day. You can prioritize and have rest and hobbies. Let me give you an example. I'm a sports guy, so I'm a big Duke basketball fan. I just like sports, so I'll watch them. And I have a couple of like Carolina Hurricanes because I'm in Raleigh, Carolina Panthers because I'm in North Carolina, although they have been bad for forever. My 7-year-old son, in fact, has asked me recently if we can pick another team because for his whole life they've been very bad. But I like watching sports, and when during the Duke basketball season, I will put it on my calendar. We have YouTube TV, so I will often watch the games like delayed so we can fast forward the commercials. Or if I got a meeting that night, I'll watch it after, and I'll stay up late because I enjoy Duke basketball. I just like it. Watched it my entire life. So sometimes I'll be talking to people and be like, talking to guys, getting to meet them, and I'll be like, hey, you're a sports fan, trying to find a common connection maybe with some new person. And sometimes I'll hear the phrase like, man, I just don't have any time, or I don't have how anyone has any time to watch sports. And it's kind of like, well, I just told you that I like sports, and I'm married. I got kids. I'm a pastor. Like I got a lot of stuff going on in my life, and I'm not saying what I'm saying is you don't have to watch sports, but sometimes in these conversations you get the vibe of like, I just can't do anything that I want to do because life's so crazy. And I always want to be like, that really stinks to be you, man. That really stinks to be you. And I just want to say this: if you like to, for example, I like to read. I like to grill. So there are things that I like to do. I don't do them all the time or every day. No, but I do them every week at some point. I would own that. It's good for your people to know, like, it's okay to have things that you enjoy and to live a sustainable life. So if you're talking with someone and they're maybe knocking some hobby you have and can't believe who has time to do this, blah, 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 they may not care for that. That's fine. But are they doing anything? I mean, maybe I always want to say, well, if you spend less time on your phone, maybe you could watch a game or you could do this thing that you enjoy. So again, maybe going with my ministry pet peeves is just me being an old man on this episode. But if you have hobbies, I get the temptation to like shut it down if you're talking to someone who like makes this comment of like, who has time for that? Or why would somebody spend time doing that? I would just say, you should have things in your life that you enjoy, and it is good for your people to know that you have things that you enjoy so that I encourage them to make time for things in life that they can enjoy as well. This episode's personal growth tip is my favorite financial principle. This is actually my favorite financial principle, and it goes with your personal life, but I would also encourage you as I share this, think about your ministry as well and the finances, the church budget, because this also applies to purchasing for your church. So let me give you the principle and I'll give you some practical ways to take it away. Here's one of my favorite financial principles. It's this: cost per use is more important than overall cost. When it comes to buying something, how much you're going to use it is actually more important than how much it costs overall. So the overall cost of something, therefore, should not be the only, or again, in my opinion, the biggest factor in what you purchase. What matters more is cost per use, because what would be considered to person A expensive or unnecessary might not be so for person B if person B is going to use that thing a lot more than person A would. So for example, buying a really nice fishing rod would be expensive and unnecessary for me because I never fish. Buying, for example, as I mentioned earlier, a really nice outdoor grill cart and prep station, because I'm out there a lot, would not be wasteful to me since I use my Blackstone griddle like 4 to 5 times per week on average. So a couple years ago, I bought this like really couple $100 grill cart that has all my stuff out there, but I use it all the time. I also personally buy a nice pair of sunglasses about once every 5 years, like over $200. And some people are like, man, I would never buy glasses that expensive. But for me, I like high quality lenses, and I wear my sunglasses at some point almost every single day. And so let me give you the math real quick on a $250 pair of sunglasses. There's 52 weeks out of the year, let's say 6 days a week. So let's say once a week I don't wear them. That's 312 days of use per year. 312 days times 5 years is 1,560 days of overall use, which means $250 divided by 1,560 is 16 cents per day. If that's a lot of math, here's what you got to do. I buy a pair of nice sunglasses once every 5 years for $250. It costs me 16 cents a day. Also, there's a side note too. When you buy something nicer, you're less likely to lose it because you realize its value regardless. Now that being said, here's the deal. Whether I wear my sunglasses 100 times or 1,500 times, I still spent $250 of real money. I still spent $250 of real money. However, the cost per use of the sunglasses makes a bigger investment worth it to me to have a high quality pair of sunglasses because I wear them so much. If I didn't wear them much, I wouldn't spend the money. So if you have a new purchase coming up, cost per use is an extremely valuable metric to consider, because what might be a high cost per use for someone else who's not going to use it very much might be a low cost per use for you. Because if you're going to use something a lot over a long period of time, you will almost always regret going the cheaper route, because cost per use is more important than overall cost. Again, the caveats. If you don't have a lot of money, let's say to buy a nice fancy sports car, even though you drive your car every day, you can't do it. So of course there are restraints here, but I would just say this: when it comes to certain ministry purchases, is this something you're going to use a lot or little? I would let that determine a little bit the quality of the thing you're going to buy, because cost per use really matters. Now, today's ministry question comes from our Practical Church Facebook group. Someone posted this anonymously, and so I won't share the name, but they posted in the Facebook group, they asked this question. For those of you meeting in gymnasiums, what does your setup look like? Would love to see the different ways you can make a school gym feel like a church. Now, we don't meet in a school gymnasium, but we do meet in a school auditorium. And so I just have a couple of quick thoughts. Again, if someone who's actually in a gymnasium would have more to say, but I would say this: pipe and drape is your friend. If you have a massive, big space, you do want to shrink the space because it feels very big. It's going to really crush the energy and the community feel that happens during the service. So for us, we already have chairs and we have a stage and all those things. However, we do pipe and drape. How do I explain this? there's three main sections in the auditorium. There's like the main seats, and there's two side rows of seats. So there's three main seating sections. And so we have pipe and drape in the back of each seating section in the middle of one of the rows that basically is making the auditorium smaller than what the seat, than having so that people can't sit like all the way in the back, and then we've got all these empty seats. So this is relevant to the amount of size you have or whatever, but we pipe and drape some of our seats off so that we're closer together. Now, what this means for a gymnasium is, don't put out 150 seats if you're only going to have 50 people. Like, put out fewer seats so that people have to sit together. I would maybe pipe and drape the sides so the space doesn't feel so huge and massive. And, you're probably limited on what you can do lighting wise in a gymnasium, but if there's something you could do there, that could be helpful as well. But I would just say this: I'm not really answering the gymnasium part, but what I'm saying is the vibe, for lack of a better word, that you create in your gathering matters. And I think it sounds unspiritual to say, so we kind of dismiss it. But if you think about it this way, like when you invite someone over to your house, let's say for a Bible study, man, you make sure there's enough chairs out. You make sure your house is not too hot, too cold. You might have some food or snacks. Like you do certain things to create a certain environment, and you should do certain things to create the best environment possible for a Sunday gathering. So whether it's the number of chairs, pipe and draping, maybe making sure that we're closer together, making sure that maybe the stage and the chairs aren't so far away from the entrance of the gym, so that there's this massive space that we're all spreading out if there's not a lot of people there. So I would just say, be cognizant of what's going on, get people closer together. If you have a ton of chairs, people are going to naturally sit way far from each other, and it's going to make worship, sermon, it's going to feel very dead. If you have fewer chairs, instead of making people sit closer together, they won't really have a choice, and they won't really complain about it because this is all the chairs that we have. I would just say, man, the more you can get people kind of closer together than really spread out, that'll help the environment feel a lot better. Well, as always, thanks so much for joining me today on the Practical Church Podcast. If you want more from me, you can go to dylandotson.com/Bible to get my weekly newsletter. If you want more from Mission Support, or who makes this show possible, be sure to check out missionsupport.com. missionsupport.com. And here's a great thing about all their number of services: they don't lock you into any contracts, so you can use them as long as they're helpful. And if you're not aware, we have a Facebook group. So if you're on Facebook, be sure to check out the Practical Church Facebook group. And all of these episodes are also on YouTube if you want to watch the video version as well. So thank you so much for being with me today as I shared 7 ministry pet peeves, and I'll be back with you in 2 weeks for another episode of the Practical Church Podcast.